Hi everyone, welcome to Real English,
where you learn natural English for real life.
I am Paul.
And I am Emily. Let us get started.
Today we are going to tackle a very delicate situation that happens all the time in the tech and data industries. We are talking about defending a strategic pivot.
A strategic pivot is when you completely change the direction or the goal of a project you are already working on. This is extremely common for developers and data analysts. You start building a tool, you look at the results, and you realize your original plan was flawed.
Exactly. So you rewrite the code, you change the parameters, and you fix the problem. But the challenge is not the coding, the challenge is the communication. You now have to sit down with your manager or your stakeholders and explain why you abandoned the original plan that they approved.
This can be a very uncomfortable conversation for ESL learners. If you do not frame the change correctly, it looks like you are just breaking the rules or wasting company time. They might ask, "Why did you change the data structure without asking me?"
And if you just say, "Because the old way was bad," you sound unprofessional and defensive. You need to explain that you did not make a mistake, you made a strategic optimization. You let the data guide you to a better business decision.
And beyond just changing the strategy, developers often run into issues with project boundaries. When you create a new data tool, management often assumes it will automatically connect to every other project the company is working on.
Oh, the dreaded scope creep. You build a text scraper and suddenly management expects it to automatically write the scripts for the company's video channel. You have to know how to draw a firm line and separate your projects.
Today, we are going to teach you how to do all of this. We are going to give you the blueprint for explaining a project shift and protecting your project boundaries. We call this framework the A.R.C method. A.R.C.
Let us break that down. The A stands for address the pivot. You never try to hide the fact that you changed the plan. You address it immediately, but you frame it as a positive evolution.
You say, "As we started testing the system, I realized we had a massive opportunity to pivot our strategy for better results." You own the change confidently.
Then we move to the R. R stands for Rationale. This is where you explain exactly why the old way was limiting and why the new way is superior. But you must use objective metrics, not personal opinions.
You do not say, "I did not like sorting the data that way." You say, "The previous categorization method was creating too much noise, so I shifted the focus to a more high-traffic data pool."
Finally, the C. C stands for Compartmentalize. To compartmentalize means to put things into separate, isolated boxes. When you introduce a new tool or a new dataset, you must explicitly state what it does and, more importantly, what it does not do.
Exactly. You say, "I want to be clear on the scope. This database is completely decoupled from our other media projects." It sets the boundaries instantly.
Address the pivot, rationale, compartmentalize. The A.R.C method keeps you in control of your projects and your reputation. But to truly sell this strategy, we need to upgrade your corporate vocabulary. Let us open up the toolkit with our 5 pocket words for today.
Word number 1 is our core verb, to pivot. In basketball, a pivot is when you keep one foot planted on the ground but turn your entire body in a new direction. In business, it means fundamentally changing your strategy while keeping your core business intact.
You say, "The initial data was weak, so we decided to pivot our approach entirely."
Word number 2 is a fantastic data verb, aggregate. To aggregate means to collect and combine many different pieces of information into one single mass or database.
You do not say, "My script collects a lot of news from different websites," you say. The program is designed to aggregate the top global stories into a centralized hub.
Word number 3 is a crucial verb for setting boundaries, decouple. To couple things is to join them together. To decouple means to completely separate them so they function independently.
You say, "We need to decouple the text scraping software from the video production pipeline. They are 2 entirely separate workflows."
Word number 4 is an adjective, standalone. This describes something that operates completely on its own, without needing to be connected to anything else.
You say, this database is a standalone project. It does not feed into any of our existing applications.
And word number 5 is a noun, scope. In project management, scope refers to the defined boundaries of a project. It tells you exactly what is included and what is excluded.
You say, adding a translation feature to this tool is currently outside the scope of this project.
Pivot, aggregate, decouple, standalone, and scope. Use these words and you will sound like a seasoned project manager. Now let us head into the Smooth It Out clinic to fix those awkward direct translations.
Let us start with how we announce the change. A learner might walk into a meeting and say, I changed the code because the old idea wasn't working.
That sounds like a failure. Smooth it out and sound strategic. You say, after analyzing the initial outputs, I made the decision to pivot our development strategy.
How about explaining the actual change in the data? Let's say you stopped sorting information by complex categories and just focused on what is popular. A learner might say, I stopped looking at political arguments and just look at the hot news now.
That is too casual. Smooth it out using our pocket words. You say, I modified the script to focus entirely on high-traffic, trending global stories rather than categorizing the data by political factions.
Categorizing data by political factions. That sounds so analytical and precise. Now, what happens when management tries to connect this new data to an unrelated project? A learner might say, no, this is not for the video channel, it is just for me.
You need to sound firm but professional. Smooth it out by saying, I want to clarify the scope. This program is completely decoupled from our active media projects.
And if they ask what the project actually is, you don't say, it is just a thing by itself. You say, it functions purely as a standalone analytics database.
Excellent upgrades. It is time to put the A.R.C framework and all of our vocabulary into action. Let us move to the practice conversation.
The scenario is this. I am a data developer working on internal tools. A few weeks ago, I got approval from my director, Emily, to build a custom Python data aggregation tool. The original plan was to scrape 24-hour media broadcasts and categorize all the news based on political bias.
And I am expecting to see a database neatly divided into left-wing and right-wing political talking points.
But as I started coding and pulling the data, I realized the strategy was terrible. Dividing news into political factions was completely ineffective and created a very noisy, useless database. So, without asking Emily, I changed the script. I threw out the political categories and programmed it to simply capture the top 24-hour hottest global trending news, regardless of politics.
I am going to call Paul into my office to review the database. Furthermore, our company just launched a brand new video media channel, and I am assuming Paul's text data is going to be used for those video scripts.
But it is not. I need to defend my strategic pivot, explain why trending global stories are better than political bias, and explicitly decouple this text scraper from the new video channel. I am going to use the A.R.C method right now. Here we go. Hi, Emily. You wanted to review the new aggregation database?
Hi, Paul. Yes, have a seat. I was just looking at the back end of the Python scraper you deployed this week. The text extraction seems to be working smoothly, but I am confused by the categorization. I thought we agreed to filter these 24-hour broadcast transcripts by political bias. I am not seeing any of those faction tags.
You are completely right, Emily. That was the initial project outline. However, after running the first few live tests, I actually made the decision to pivot our development strategy regarding how we sort the data.
You pivoted the strategy? Without running it by me first? Why?
I understand it is a shift from the initial proposal, but I had to look at the rationale of the data we were getting. I found that dividing the news into political factions was actually making the tool less effective. It was isolating stories and creating artificial echo chambers in the data.
Okay, but if we aren't tracking political bias, what exactly is the script aggregating right now?
I reprogrammed the targeting parameters to focus entirely on volume and engagement. The script is now capturing the 24-hour hottest high-traffic global stories. Instead of categorizing by bias, we are capturing what the world is actually paying attention to in real time. It provides a much cleaner, wider lens on global events.
I see. So rather than a deep dive into political arguments, it is a macro-level view of trending global traffic.
Exactly. By dropping the political bias requirement, the script runs faster and the database is infinitely more useful for broad market analysis.
All right, the rationale makes sense. A high-traffic global focus is definitely easier to monetize anyway. Now, regarding the integration, we just launched the new video channel this morning, and the initial performance metrics are looking solid. How quickly can we start feeding this trending global text data into the video channel's production pipeline?
I am glad the video channel launch is doing well, but I need to be very clear about the project scope here. This automated text scraping program has absolutely no relation to our established video channel.
Wait, it doesn't? I assumed since you were scraping trending news, we would use that text to write the scripts for the video hosts.
I understand why it seems like a natural fit, but technically and strategically, they need to remain completely decoupled. The text scraper is a standalone database designed purely for internal market research and archiving. If we try to shoehorn raw, scraped text directly into a creative video pipeline, it is going to create massive quality control issues for the media team.
So you are saying the text aggregation and the active video media projects need to remain entirely isolated from each other.
Precisely. They serve two completely different strategic goals. The scraper aggregates raw global traffic. The video channel requires curated, produced content. Blurring the lines between the two is outside the scope of what this Python script was built to handle safely.
Okay, Paul, I appreciate the clarity. It is good to know exactly where the boundaries are before the media team starts asking for access. Keep the database decoupled and standalone. Let us review the high-traffic global trends at the end of the month and see what the data shows us.
That sounds perfect. I will have a comprehensive trend report ready for you by the 30th. Thanks, Emily.
And scene. Paul, you handled that incredibly well. I came at you with two very difficult managerial questions, and you didn't flinch.
I held my ground, and the key was using the A.R.C method to guide the conversation. First, I addressed the pivot. I didn't make excuses. I said, yes, that was the initial outline, but I made the decision to pivot. I owned the change.
And your rationale was bulletproof. When I asked why you changed it, you didn't say, I hated the old way. You said that categorizing by political factions was making the tool less effective, and that high-traffic global stories provided a wider lens. You made it about data quality.
That is what management wants to hear. And then came the hardest part, compartmentalizing the project. You tried to drag my scraping tool into your video channel, which happens all the time in tech.
It really does. Management sees a new tool and instantly wants to plug it into everything. But you set a very firm boundary. You used the word decoupled perfectly. You said, this program is completely decoupled from our active media projects.
I also made sure to define what it actually was, calling it a standalone database. By defining the scope so clearly, I protected myself from being forced to do double the work, managing both a database and a video script pipeline.
And your vocabulary was incredibly professional, using phrases like aggregate, political factions, high-traffic global stories, standalone, and project scope ensures that even when you disagree with your manager, you sound like a peer, not a subordinate.
That is the ultimate goal. For all of our listeners who build tools, manage data, or run their own projects, do not be afraid to pivot when the data tells you to. But you must communicate that pivot professionally.
And always protect the scope of your projects. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today for another deep dive into corporate communication.
Keep practicing those boundaries, trust your data, and we will see you next time on Real English.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.